Welcome to the Hoja on Architecture podcast. Concept and Design. Chapter 4, Storytelling 2, Experience. In the previous episode, we discussed meaning as the conceptual nucleus, the emotional, intellectual, and symbolic core that allows a project to articulate its interior logic. Yet meaning alone is not enough. A concept that never reaches the body remains suspended in theory. It might be eloquent, clever, even moving in its textual form, but unless it becomes an embodied reality, it fails to enter the world of architecture and interior design. Experience is the moment when the concept begins to breathe and when the user becomes its co-author. Meaning sets an intention, experience fulfills it. Experience is the second half of storytelling because design is fundamentally temporal. We do not merely see space, we travel through it. We do not only read architecture, we live inside it, and in that living, a story unfolds. This distinguishes architectural storytelling from literary storytelling. The designer does not hand the user a text. They craft a landscape of movement, atmosphere, and perception in which the user writes the story through their own presence. Experience transforms a concept from an idea into a trajectory, from a definition into an encounter, from a proposition into a lived moment. To design experience is first to understand the sequence. Every project, regardless of scale, has a spatial rhythm: anticipation, approach, threshold, expansion, compression, pause, transition, climax, release. These are not dramatic embellishments, they are the fundamental grammar of how we perceive space. A user rarely experiences a project at a glance. Instead, the project reveals itself gradually, often subtly, through a choreography that the designer orchestrates. When this choreography aligns with the concept, the project feels coherent. When it does not, the experience becomes fragmented. Sequence is the designer's way of guiding the concept through time. However, experience is not only about movement, it is also about atmosphere. Atmosphere is the sensory membrane through which a concept becomes perceptible. Light, texture, temperature, acoustics, materiality, color, and spatial proportion combine to create an emotional climate that surrounds the user. If meaning is the intellectual intention, atmosphere is the emotional delivery system. A concept centered on serenity demands soft shadows, gentle transitions, and tactile materials that invite slow perception. A concept built on contrast or tension requires sharper geometries, stronger lighting hierarchies, and perceptual disruptions. Atmosphere ensures that the user's senses understand what the designer's words intend. Another dimension of experience is embodiment. While drawings describe form, the body describes truth. People lean, touch, breathe, turn, step back, move closer, slow down, accelerate, and hesitate. The body negotiates space with an intelligence older than language. When designers ignore embodiment, their projects remain image-driven rather than experience-driven. But when they work with it, details become narrative devices. The height of a sill, the weight of a door, the thickness of a handrail, the softness of a corner, the depth of a threshold. These details are not functional afterthoughts. They are experiential punctuation marks that shape how a space feels to inhabit. Students often produce strong meanings but weak experiential strategies. They can articulate what their concept symbolizes, but not how it should be lived. They may design spaces that look coherent in plan or convincing in section, yet lack the experiential continuity that gives architecture its presence. When meaning and experience remain disconnected, the user has no access to the concept except through explanatory text, and descriptive text is evidence of conceptual failure. If a concept must be explained, it has not been spatially realized. Experience is where the concept proves itself or collapses. This is why narrative and experience are intimately linked. Narrative is the conceptual structure of how the story should unfold. Experience is the unfolding itself. If narrative gives the concept its script, experience gives it its performance. The two must support one another for the project to achieve emotional clarity. In well-designed projects, users feel as if the space makes sense, even without knowing the theoretical background. That sense of intuitive coherence is not accidental. It is the result of a narrative translated successfully into experience. Experience also produces memory, and memory is where architecture leaves its longest-lasting trace. People rarely recall the exact dimensions of a room or the technical details of a facade. Instead, they remember the warm glow of light against a wall at dusk, the sound of footsteps softening on timber, the feeling of relief when stepping into a larger volume, or the surprise of a framed view. Memory is not an archive of information, it is an archive of sensation. When concept and experience are aligned, the memory becomes the final storyteller, carrying the project beyond its drawings and into the user's life. But experience is not only sensory or spatial, it is also cognitive. Users constantly interpret space, whether consciously or not. They look for cues, patterns, intentions, and meanings. A successful design communicates its story without insisting on it. It guides without dictating. It leaves room for personal interpretation while maintaining conceptual clarity. This balance, clarity with openness, is one of the most delicate aspects of experiential design. A concept that is too rigid suffocates the user. A concept that is too vague leaves the user lost. Experience sits between these two extremes, grounding the concept without fixing it. Ultimately, storytelling too. Experience is an invitation to see concept not as a static proclamation but as a dynamic unfolding. A concept is not simply what the designer says, it is what the user experiences. Experience is where intention becomes encounter, where narrative becomes perception, and where architecture becomes lived reality. Meaning may shape the soul of a project, but experience is what brings that soul into motion. And in that motion, the concept reveals its proper form, not in words, but in the lived choreography of space. Next time, we shift from experiencing space to organizing it, examining the narrative framework that stabilizes the concept and coordinates every architectural decision it will eventually generate. This concludes the Concept in Design Chapter 4, Storytelling 2, Experience. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.